Life has a funny way of hitting you when you least expect it. Looking back, I can see the cracks that had been forming for years, but at the time, I thought I had everything under control. My name is John, and I've been married to Amanda for 12 years. We met in college, fell head over heels, and quickly tied the knot. I was working in finance, climbing the corporate ladder, while Amanda was content managing the household and raising our two kids, Ethan and Emma. Our marriage wasn't perfect. Whose is? But it was good, or so I thought. Over the past year, things had started to feel off. Amanda was more distant, her laughter less frequent. She spent more time on her phone, always quick to lock the screen when I walked into the room. It bothered me, but I chalked it up to the pressures of daily life. I was working long hours, having just been promoted to a senior position at my firm. My boss, Tom, seemed to demand more and more of my time. Late nights at the office became the norm, and Amanda never complained, which should have been a red flag. I was so focused on providing for my family that I didn't notice the signs right in front of me. It wasn't just the phone or the distance. There were other things, too. Amanda started dressing up more often, even when she wasn't going anywhere special. She began working out religiously, spending hours at the gym. At first, I admired her dedication, thinking she was just trying to stay healthy. But in hindsight, it was clear she was preparing for something, or someone, else. One evening, after another grueling day at work, I came home to find Amanda in the kitchen cooking dinner. She looked up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" she asked, her voice a little too cheerful. Same old," I replied, kissing her on the cheek. "Tom's got us working on this big project. It's never ending." "Sounds stressful," she said, her tone sympathetic. "You should take it easy. We can't have you burning out." "I'll be fine," I assured her, though the exhaustion was evident in my voice. As we sat down to eat, I noticed Amanda's phone vibrating on the counter. She glanced at it quickly, then turned it face down. My curiosity was piqued, but I didn't say anything. I was too tired to start a conversation that I feared might lead to a fight. The next few weeks followed the same pattern. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Amanda remained distant, and I continued to ignore the growing unease in my gut. It wasn't until that fateful night that everything came crashing down. I was working late, as usual, trying to meet yet another deadline. The office was almost empty, just me and Tom, burning the midnight oil. As I was about to call it a night, Tom came over with a sly grin on his face. "Hey, John, how's it going?" he asked, his tone overly friendly. "Just trying to finish up this report," I replied, not looking up from my computer. "You're always working so hard," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "But sometimes it's good to take a break. Go home, spend time with the wife and kids." "I will, Tom. Just need to wrap this up." Sure, he said, lingering a bit longer. "By the way, do you have Amanda's number? I need to ask her about that charity event she's helping with." My heart skipped a beat. Why would Tom need Amanda's number? But I brushed it off. "Yeah, I think you have it. It's in the company directory." Right, he said, finally walking away. "Don't work too hard, John." I finished up my work and headed home, Tom's words still echoing in my mind. As I walked through the door, the house was eerily quiet. Amanda was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "Hey, you're home late again," she said, not looking up. "Yeah, Tom wanted us to finish that project," I said, sitting down next to her. "He mentioned you were helping with a charity event?" She looked startled for a moment, then quickly recovered. "Oh yeah, just something I'm doing with the PTA." I nodded, though the unease was back, stronger this time. Something was definitely wrong, and I needed to find out what it was. Little did I know, my world was about to be turned upside down. The unease gnawed at me for days, refusing to be ignored. Amanda's distant behavior, her constant secrecy with her phone, and Tom's peculiar interest in her all pointed towards something sinister. I decided that I had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The opportunity presented itself sooner than I expected. One evening, I left the office late as usual, but this time, I had a plan. I had noticed Tom's car still parked in the lot when I was leaving. Instead of heading straight home, I decided to swing by his office. Something in the back of my mind told me that tonight was the night I would get my answers. As I approached the office building, I noticed that the lights in Tom's office were still on. I parked my car and walked quietly towards the entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see shadows moving inside, and the faint sound of voices reached my ears. My suspicion turned to dread. I took the stairs two at a time, trying to move as silently as possible. When I reached Tom's office, I paused outside the door, straining to hear. The voices were clearer now. Tom's deep, familiar tone, and another voice, softer, more intimate. Amanda. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. Part of me wanted to turn around and run, to pretend I had never suspected anything. But I needed to know. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I turned the knob slowly and pushed the door open just a crack. The scene inside made my blood run cold. There was Amanda, her blouse unbuttoned, perched on Tom's desk. Tom stood between her legs, his hands roaming over her body. They were lost in their own world, oblivious to the door slowly opening behind them. Amanda's face was flushed, her eyes closed in pleasure as Tom kissed her neck. "I can't believe we finally have some time alone," she whispered, her voice dripping with desire. "I told you he'd be working late again," Tom replied, his hands moving to her waist, pulling her closer. The rage that had been building inside me exploded. I pushed the door open with a force that sent it slamming against the wall. Amanda and Tom jumped apart, their eyes wide with shock and fear. "What the fuck is this?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the small office. Amanda's face drained of color as she scrambled to button her blouse. "John, it's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice trembling. Tom, ever the smooth talker, tried to regain his composure. "John, buddy, let's talk about this. There's no need to overreact." "Overreact?" I repeated, my voice shaking with fury. "I walk in on you fucking my wife, and you tell me I'm overreacting." Amanda's eyes filled with tears as she reached out to me. "John, please, let me explain. It's not what you think." I stepped back, unable to bear her touch. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded, my eyes locked on Tom. "How long have you been screwing my wife behind my back?" Tom had the decency to look ashamed, but his arrogance quickly resurfaced. "It just happened, John. One thing led to another, and—" "Save it," I snapped, cutting him off. "I don't want to hear your excuses." Amanda sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "John, please, we can work through this. It was a mistake." I felt like I was being torn apart. The woman I had loved and trusted for years had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And the man who had been my mentor, my boss, had taken advantage of that trust. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You want to explain? Fine. Explain to me how you could do this to me, to our family." Amanda's sobs intensified, but she didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth was right in front of me, and it was undeniable. I turned to Tom, my voice cold and hard. "You're going to regret this, Tom. I promise you that." With that, I walked out of the office, leaving Amanda and Tom behind. The pain of betrayal burned deep in my chest, but I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. The drive home felt like an eternity. Every moment I replayed the scene in Tom's office in my mind, each detail searing itself into my memory. The betrayal was overwhelming, and I felt like I was on the brink of losing control. When I pulled into the driveway, the house loomed in front of me, no longer a place of warmth and comfort, but a battleground, where the next confrontation would unfold. I slammed the car door shut and marched inside. The kids were already asleep, their innocent faces unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Amanda had followed me home in her car, and I heard her footsteps behind me as she hurried to catch up. "John, please, let's talk about this," she begged, her voice shaky. I whirled around to face her, the fury bubbling up inside me. "Talk? You want to talk now? After what I just saw?" Tears streamed down her face, but my anger was too intense to be moved by her display of emotion. "John, I'm sorry. It was a mistake, I swear. It didn't mean anything." "A mistake?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store, Amanda. What you did was deliberate, calculated. You betrayed me." She reached out to touch me, but I recoiled. "Don't touch me. I can't even look at you right now." "Please, John, think about the kids. Think about our family." "I am thinking about the kids," I said coldly, "which is why you need to pack your things and leave." Her eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious."
Oh, I'm dead serious. You need to get out, now. But where will I go? She cried, desperation creeping into her voice. I don't care, Amanda.
Go to a friend's house. Go to a hotel. Just get out of here. You're not staying under this roof tonight. She looked around, as if searching for something to hold on to. Some way to convince me to change my mind. But there was nothing she could say or do that would erase what I had seen, what I now knew. John, please, she whispered, her voice breaking. Let's try to work this out. For the sake of our family. For the sake of our family? I repeated, incredulous. You weren't thinking about our family when you were screwing my boss on his desk. It's too late for that. I walked past her, heading to our bedroom. You have 10 minutes to get your things and go. If you're not out by then, I'll call the police and have you removed. Amanda stood there, frozen, her tears falling silently. I didn't wait to see if she would move. I went into our bedroom and locked the door behind me. Inside, I leaned against the door, trying to calm my racing heart. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in on me. I could hear her moving around outside, the sound of drawers opening and closing, her soft sobs as she gathered her belongings. The minutes dragged on, each one filled with a mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. Finally, the house fell silent. I heard the front door open and close, and then the sound of her car starting and driving away. I waited a few more minutes to make sure she was really gone before I unlocked the door and stepped out into the hallway. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that follows a storm. I walked through the rooms, my mind numb. The kids were still asleep, blissfully unaware of the upheaval that had just occurred. I paused outside their bedrooms, listening to their soft breathing. They were my anchor, the reason I needed to stay strong. Returning to the living room, I sank onto the couch, exhaustion washing over me. The weight of the evening's events pressed down on me, and for the first time since discovering the affair, I allowed myself to feel the full impact of the betrayal. The woman I had loved and trusted had shattered our life together, and there was no going back. As I sat there, staring blankly at the darkened TV screen, the emotions began to overwhelm me. The anger, the sadness, the sense of loss, all of it came crashing down. I buried my face in my hands and let the tears flow, the sobs racking my body. Amanda was gone, and our marriage was over. There was no more pretending, no more trying to fix what was irreparably broken. The only thing left to do was pick up the pieces and figure out how to move forward for the sake of my children and myself. In the days that followed, I was consumed by anger and a thirst for revenge. The betrayal by Amanda and Tom was unforgivable, and I couldn't let them get away with it. It wasn't just about my marriage. It was about my dignity and self-respect. They had taken something precious from me, and I was determined to take something from them in return. My plan took shape slowly, fueled by sleepless nights and endless anger. Tom had a wife, Laura, who was everything Amanda was not: kind, supportive, and deeply in love with her husband. I had met her at various company events, and she had always been gracious and warm. The thought of involving her in my revenge was distasteful at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that hitting Tom where it hurt the most was the only way to make him feel the pain he had caused me. I started by reaching out to Laura under the guise of needing someone to talk to. I knew she would sympathize with my situation, especially once she learned about Tom's betrayal. It wasn't hard to arrange a casual meeting. I bumped into her at a local coffee shop where we had a polite conversation about life and work. It was easy to steer the conversation towards my personal life, and Laura, ever the compassionate listener, was quick to offer her support. "John, I had no idea things were so bad between you and Amanda," she said, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know." I hesitated, playing the part of the wounded husband. "I just feel so lost, Laura. I thought I could trust her, but I was wrong. And now, I don't know how to move forward." She reached out and touched my hand. "You're a good man, John. You deserve better than this. Have you talked to Tom about it? He's always spoken highly of you." The irony of her words almost made me laugh, but I kept my composure. "Tom? No, I haven't. I don't think he would understand." Laura shook her head. "He's a good friend. I'm sure he would. I changed the subject, not wanting to push too hard too soon. Over the next few weeks, I made it a point to run into Laura more often. We had coffee, lunch, and even dinner a couple of times. Each meeting brought us closer, and I could see her warming up to me, not just as a friend, but as something more. It was during one of our dinners that I decided to make my move. We were seated in a cozy corner of a quiet restaurant, the ambiance perfect for a more intimate conversation. Laura looked beautiful that night, her hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes sparkling in the candlelight. I leaned in, my voice soft and earnest. "Laura, I need to tell you something," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. She looked at me, her expression serious. "What is it, John?" "I haven't been completely honest with you," I began. "There's more to my story than just Amanda's betrayal." Her eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to reveal. "Tom and Amanda, they're having an affair." The shock on her face was immediate and profound. She pulled back, her hand covering her mouth. "What? No, that can't be true. Tom wouldn't." "He is," I interrupted, my voice firm. "I saw them together, Laura, in his office. I didn't want to believe it either, but I have proof." She stared at me, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't know how," I admitted. "I didn't want to hurt you, but you deserve to know the truth." The tears spilled over and she shook her head. Disbelief etched on her face. "How could he do this to me? To us?" I reached out and took her hand, my touch gentle and reassuring. "I'm so sorry, Laura. I wish I didn't have to be the one to tell you." For a moment, we sat in silence, the weight of the revelation hanging heavy between us. Then Laura looked up at me, her expression a mix of anger and determination. "What are we going to do?" "We make them pay," I said, my voice cold and resolute. "Together." Over the next few weeks, Laura and I became closer, united by our shared pain and the need for revenge. We spent more time together, our bond growing stronger with each passing day. It wasn't long before our relationship turned physical. The passion between us was intense, fueled by the betrayal we both felt. The first time we slept together, it was in my house, in the very bed that Amanda and I had once shared. The act was both a defiance and a reclaiming of my dignity. Laura was hesitant at first, but her need for comfort and validation soon overcame her reservations. We lay together afterward, our bodies entwined, the shared warmth a temporary balm for our wounded hearts. "Tom can never find out about this," Laura whispered, her head resting on my chest. "He won't," I assured her. "This is our secret." But the affair was just the beginning. With Laura's help, I started to dismantle Tom's business from the inside. She had access to his emails, his schedules, and his private documents. We used this information to sabotage his deals, undermine his reputation, and slowly chip away at the empire he had built. We leaked confidential information to his competitors, made anonymous tips to regulatory bodies, and spread rumors that tarnished his name. Every move was calculated, every action designed to bring him down. It was a slow, methodical process, but it was effective. Tom's business began to falter. His clients started to doubt him, and his investors pulled out. Through it all, Laura and I maintained our facade. To the outside world, we were just two people supporting each other through difficult times. No one suspected the depth of our relationship or the extent of our plans. We were careful, meticulous, and ruthless. The final blow came when we exposed Tom's affair to the board of directors. Using the evidence Laura had gathered, we made sure that everyone knew about his indiscretions. The scandal was too much for the company to bear. Tom was forced to resign in disgrace, his career in ruins. With Tom out of the picture, Laura and I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. We had succeeded in our mission. But as the dust settled, I realized that revenge, no matter how justified, could not heal the wounds of betrayal. The damage was done, and we were left to pick up the pieces of our shattered lives. Laura and I continued our relationship, but it was tainted by the knowledge of what we had done. The passion that had once burned so brightly began to fade, replaced by a lingering sense of emptiness. We had won the battle, but the victory felt hollow. In the end, I knew that I had to find a way to move forward, to rebuild my life for the sake of my children and myself. The road to healing would be long and difficult, but I was determined to find a path that led to peace and redemption. The taste of victory was bitter. With Tom's business in shambles and his personal life in ruins, I thought I would feel a sense of relief. But it was fleeting. The satisfaction of revenge quickly faded, leaving behind a void that was impossible to ignore. I realized that my life was still in tatters, and the only way to truly move forward was to sever the remaining ties that bound me to Amanda. Divorce was the only option. The mere thought of it brought a mixture of sorrow and liberation. I had loved Amanda deeply, but her betrayal had destroyed any chance of reconciliation. For the sake of my own sanity and the well-being of our children, I needed to end this chapter of my life. I called my lawyer, Paul, a no-nonsense attorney who had seen it all. He listened patiently as I explained the situation, and he assured me that we could proceed with the divorce swiftly and decisively. "John, it's clear that this marriage is beyond repair," Paul said. "We'll file for divorce on the grounds of adultery. Given the evidence you have, this should be straightforward." The process began with a formal notification to Amanda. I handed her the papers one evening when she came to see the kids. Her face turned pale as she read the documents, her hands trembling. "John, you can't be serious," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I am serious, Amanda," I replied, my voice steady. "This is the only way forward. We need to move on, for our sake and for the kids." She looked devastated, but there was no turning back. The decision was made. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings with lawyers, negotiations, and court filings. Amanda tried to fight it at first, insisting that we could work things out, but her arguments fell on deaf ears. The betrayal was too deep, the trust irreparably broken. Custody of Ethan and Emma was my primary concern. I wanted to ensure they had a stable and loving environment, free from the turmoil that had consumed our marriage. Amanda and I eventually agreed to joint custody, with the children living with me during the weekdays and with her on weekends. The day of the final hearing arrived, and as I sat in the courtroom, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led us to this point. Amanda sat across from me, looking worn and defeated. The judge read the final decree, and just like that, our marriage was officially over. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. The weight of the past months had finally lifted, but the emptiness it left behind was profound. I had to remind myself that this was the right decision, that this was the first step towards rebuilding my life. Back at home, I sat down with Ethan and Emma to explain what had happened. They were too young to understand the full extent of the situation, but I did my best to reassure them that both their parents loved them and would always be there for them. "Mommy and Daddy aren't going to live together anymore," I said gently, trying to hide my own emotions. "But that doesn't change how much we love you. We're still a family, just in a different way." They nodded, their young minds trying to process the change. I hugged them tightly, promising myself that I would do everything in my power to give them a happy and stable life. The days that followed were challenging. Adjusting to single parenthood was a daunting task, but I found solace in the routine of daily life. Work, school runs, and bedtime stories became my anchors, helping me navigate the turbulent sea of emotions. Laura and I remained in contact, but our relationship had changed. The bond we had forged through our shared pain and revenge was not enough to sustain a genuine, loving relationship. We both needed time to heal and to figure out our own paths forward. One evening, Laura called me, her voice hesitant. "John, I think we need to take a step back," she said. "This has been an intense few months, and I need to focus on myself for a while." I agreed, understanding that our relationship had been born out of a place of hurt and anger. We promised to remain friends, supporting each other as we moved forward separately. With the divorce finalized, and my relationship with Laura taking a back seat, I was left to face the reality of my new life. It was time to focus on myself and my children, to rebuild from the ground up. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold. The weeks following the divorce were filled with a mixture of melancholy and tentative optimism. I had spent so long living in a state of anger and betrayal that learning to live without that constant weight was an adjustment. But with each passing day, I began to find a new rhythm and a sense of peace that had been missing for far too long. The first step in this new life was focusing on my children, Ethan and Emma. They needed stability and reassurance, and I was determined to provide that. We established a routine that included fun activities, family dinners, and weekend adventures. I wanted to create memories that would make them feel loved and secure, despite the upheaval they had experienced. One Saturday morning, I took Ethan and Emma to a nearby park. The sun was shining, and the air was filled with the sounds of laughter and birds chirping. As I watched them play, I felt a sense of contentment that had eluded me for months. "Dad, watch me!" Ethan called out as he climbed to the top of the jungle gym. "I'm watching, buddy," I replied, giving him a thumbs up. Emma ran over to me, her face flushed with excitement. "Can we get ice cream after this, Dad?" "Absolutely," I said, smiling down at her. "Ice cream sounds like a great idea." As I sat on the park bench, watching my children and feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, I realized that I was finally beginning to heal. The pain of betrayal and the anger of revenge were fading, replaced by a renewed focus on what truly mattered: my family and my own well-being. I also decided to reconnect with old friends and hobbies that I had neglected during the tumultuous period of my life. I joined a local running club and started participating in weekend runs. The physical activity was a great way to clear my mind and meet new people. One evening after a run, I found myself chatting with a fellow runner named Lisa. She was friendly and easy to talk to, and we quickly discovered that we had a lot in common. "Running is such a great stress reliever," Lisa said, taking a sip of water. "It's been a lifesaver for me these past few years." "Same here," I replied. "It's helped me get through some tough times." We continued talking, sharing stories about our lives and our love for running. It was refreshing to connect with someone new, without the baggage of the past weighing me down. As the weeks turned into months, Lisa and I grew closer. We started seeing each other outside of the running club, going for coffee and even having dinner a few times. She was kind, understanding, and had a positive outlook on life that was infectious. One evening, as we sat on my porch after a long run, Lisa turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "John, I really enjoy spending time with you. I feel like we have a connection." "I feel the same way," I said, feeling a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in a long time. "It's been a while since I've felt this happy." She smiled, reaching out to take my hand. "Let's see where this goes then. No pressure, just taking things one day at a time." "One day at a time sounds perfect," I agreed, squeezing her hand gently. Lisa and I continued to grow closer, and as our relationship blossomed, I found myself thinking about the future with a sense of hope and excitement. It was a stark contrast to the despair I had felt just months earlier. Meanwhile, I also focused on my career. With Tom out of the picture, the company underwent significant changes. I was promoted to a higher position, one that came with new responsibilities, but also new opportunities. The work was challenging, but I embraced it with a renewed sense of purpose. My colleagues noticed the change in me. "John, you seem different lately," one of them remarked during a meeting. "More confident, more focused." "I guess I am," I replied with a smile. "I've been through a lot, but it's made me stronger." As I navigated my new life, I made it a point to maintain a healthy balance between work, family, and personal time. I took up new hobbies, like cooking and photography, and even started a small garden in my backyard. These activities brought me joy and a sense of accomplishment that was deeply fulfilling. The kids adapted well to the new routine, and our bond grew stronger with each passing day. We took trips to the zoo, went on hikes, and spent lazy Sundays watching movies together. It was a simple but profoundly satisfying life. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Ethan looked up at me with a serious expression. "Dad, are you happy now?" The question caught me off guard, but I smiled and nodded. "Yes, Ethan, I am happy. Happier than I've been in a long time." Emma chimed in. "We're happy too, Dad. We love spending time with you." My heart swelled with pride and love for my children. "I love spending time with you too. You two are the best thing that's ever happened to me." As the months turned into a year, I reflected on the journey I had been through. The betrayal, the revenge, the divorce. It had all been incredibly painful. But it had also been a catalyst for change, pushing me to reevaluate my life and priorities. I had learned to let go of anger and embrace forgiveness, not just for Amanda and Tom, but for myself. Holding on to the past would only keep me from fully embracing the future, and my future was filled with promise. Lisa and I continued to build our relationship, supporting each other through the ups and downs of life. She became a wonderful presence in my children's lives, and they adored her. Together, we created a blended family that was built on love, trust, and mutual respect. One sunny afternoon, as we all gathered in the backyard for a barbecue, I looked around at the people who mattered most to me. Ethan and Emma were playing with Lisa's son, Jake, while Lisa and I prepared the food. Laughter filled the air, and the smell of grilled burgers wafted through the yard. "This is what life's all about," Lisa said, wrapping her arms around me. "Family, friends, and making the most of every moment." "I couldn't agree more," I replied, kissing her forehead. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" "We have," she said, smiling up at me. "And the best is yet to come." As I stood there, surrounded by the people I loved, I realized that the journey of healing and growth was ongoing. There would always be challenges, but I had the strength and resilience to face them head-on. Life had a way of surprising you, of taking you through unexpected twists and turns. But it also had a way of bringing you exactly where you needed to be. And in that moment, I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. Happy, loved, and ready to embrace whatever the future held.